This is the Contender's Edge podcast, where ideas challenge institutions and underdogs rise to lead in construction. Hosted by Zulk, bringing you no BS insights, real stories, and tech-smart strategies to outbuild the giants in the construction industry.
Good day, Megan. Welcome to the Contender's Edge podcast. We're so happy to have you here.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
Before we get into the formalities of what we're here for today, Megan, maybe you want to share a little bit about who Megan is, what you do, what you've done, why people in construction should be listening to you.
Sure. My name is Megan Shapiro. I am a full-time practicing construction attorney, primarily practicing in California, based out of Sacramento. I've been doing that for about 17 years now, representing all the stakeholders. So I've had owners, GCs, CMs, design professionals, trade contractors, specialty contractors, material suppliers, pretty much you name it. If they've touched it, I've probably represented them. The bulk of my experience as an attorney has been informed by litigation. So that's kind of how I fell into this world. And about, 3 years ago, I noticed some common trends in the litigation that a lot of my construction clients were getting into. And I thought, there's a lot we could be doing more proactively on the front end to sort of
100%.
manage and mitigate these risks to decrease the likelihood that we're going to end up in litigation at all, or at least put ourselves in a better position if we do end up in litigation. And so I really started preaching to my clients a sort of proactive risk management approach. And that sort of naturally ballooned into starting my side stuff, which was really founded in me wanting to help more construction leaders outside of just as the lawyer licensed in California. And so that's when I started doing the contract coaching and some of the other, speaking at construction events, founding my own construction event and things like that. That's kind of how it all started.
That's awesome. So yeah, that's a great segue. I mean, I know you have a summit coming up in the very near future. It's happening in Chicago. So it's an annual summit. Tell us a little bit about this summit that you put on that people want to come to.
Yeah, so it's called Converge Construction Summit. It is an annual event this year. It'll be in Chicago, June 3rd through 5th. We like to pick a different location every year, so I will be announcing the location for 2027 in Chicago. So if anybody out there is interested in potentially attending in 2027, stay tuned. I'll be releasing the next destination here in just about a month or so. It is an industry event. It was really sort of founded on the concept of relationships. So our tagline is learn, connect, grow, because I personally have been observing, and I've been hearing others talk about their own observations, that industry events have really gone in a direction that I personally don't love. They have become a lot more pitch fest-y, right? I was just speaking at a big industry event in Vegas a month and a half ago. And I was kind of listening to the people in the hallway, and they were like, wow, that panel, your presentation was the only one that didn't have anything to sell.
Yeah.
And I was like, whew, wow, that's really validating, because Converge is sort of the opposite of that. We have sponsors and we have a lot of presentations and panels, but it's all about the relationships and building those connections, creating space and opportunities for people to connect with people that they may be following on LinkedIn, may have connected with on LinkedIn, may have been having conversations like this, coffee chats, Zoom chats, but to really build that space to allow them to connect in real life, to really build those relationships and deepen them. And everybody comes together with the common goal of elevating the industry. And so it's a no pitch zone. It's really just all about how can we get together collectively, tap into that collective wisdom to help make the industry better.
And you know what? That's a perfect segue of why we generated the Contender's Edge podcast. Because the reality is that when you're a large scale construction company, the simple side is that you've already gone through the painstaking of having to develop your systems, your processes, all of the above, and more than likely you already have legal on staff. It's really the small, medium enterprises where they're generally people who are really exceptional at their trades that had the gumption to go out there and really let them drag and hit the ground and say, I'm going to start my own construction company and then figure it out. So they don't have necessarily the background in contract law. They don't know what negotiations are like. And they're stumbling through these processes. I had my own construction company. I started in 2005, but I also had almost 10 years of pedigree behind me that I worked for various general contractors. And I remember the first time I had to read a contract for myself where I said, hold on, let me look at the risk profile. I'd already understood it to a large degree, but just to be safe, I reached out into my network and I said, hey, I called my friends that went to law school and said, hey, what are the things I need to look out for? And they said, hey, send us your contract. We'll take a look at it really quickly. So I was able to access, free advice that said, hey, this is a clause that while you can't strike it out of the agreement, You just need to be mindful of it. And I think that's where a lot of the advice can come from. And there's a lot of peer-to-peer support that exists in our industry. There's also a lot of peer-to-peer competition that people don't want to share. But I think for the betterment of our ecosystem, and I always say our ecosystem, as much as I want to say it, lawyers are part of our ecosystem. Don't want to admit it, but you belong in our ecosystem. So it's really important that we have that fresh, open dialogue to say, hey, listen, everyone talks about risk, but nobody really understands and quantifies risks. So we're going to touch on a few things today that I want to hear your perspective on, and that's going to help people understand what direction and flavor we're moving in. And the favorite topic is obviously AI. There's a lot of stuff in the internet and on social media, and people advertising that AI is going to help them understand contract risk. Do you have a take and a flavor on it? And is this a preview for something you're going to have at your show? Because I'm sure
I do
everyone
have
has.
a take on it.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to be at Converge, probably because of my take on it. So I use a lot of I use a lot of AI tools, right? Like I've used ChatGPT, I've used Claude, I've used Notebook LM, I've used Gemini, and I've also used some AI tools that are specific for lawyers. So you have to actually be an attorney to even have access to these types of tools. Okay.
Yep.
Separately, I also teach construction law and contracts for the UC Davis Continuing and Professional Education School in their construction management program.
Awesome.
And so I use a lot of these tools also in my teaching capacity because I want to make sure my students aren't cheating, right? So I really am playing with these tools and utilizing these tools all the time, and a lot of different tools, a huge variety of tools. And I've been doing it from the beginning, right? And I can confidently say they're not there yet. They may get there, but they are not there yet. They cannot review, redline, and give you tips on how to negotiate construction contracts yet. They sure as shit can't draft one for you. And I have been on the receiving end of clients that have said, hey, I had ChatGPT draft this contract for me. Can you just quickly take a look at it? And I'm like, I will take a look at it, but it is going to cost you more for me to try to fix your ChatGPT generated contract than if I just co-create with you out of the gate, because there are good templates to start from out there, right? Like
100%.
like AIA, AGC, consensus docs, like there's a lot of good templates that you can start from. I still wouldn't recommend using any of those just out of the box without customizing them to your own particular risk tolerance, your business strategies and goals and things like that. But they're a better starting point than just saying to ChatGPT, I'm a trade contractor, generate a sub-tier subcontract for me to use with my sub-tier subcontractors.
Okay, so
It's just not there yet.
we're clear to say that that's dumb as shit.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people that are going to be listening to this podcast are going to say, well, what do you mean? I can actually use it. The tools are good. I'll openly share this as after 30 years of being in the industry, the internet doesn't know a lot about what we've done in the construction ecosystem because we've largely kept things on our servers or we've kept them void from being out there in the public information. All these tools, these LLMs, they were scouring the internet for what's publicly available. So they don't have the nuances or the experience or the expertise to know that, hey, listen, I've actually seen 10 million of these contracts because they're not in the internet. So in the future, they'll probably be there. But at the same token, I'm also a proponent that says, hey, AI's here. You can use it, buyer beware, but you have to know how it gets utilized in your industry. And, I'll say is people will say, well, lawyers just want billable hours. So I don't want to believe what Megan has to say because she's just trying to get a billable hour. And I can tell you that my lawyers that I've had for construction lit in the past, they're like, hey, listen, we like the fact that you're organized, you're structured, and you've thought through the questions. And you know what? AI tools can help you think of some other areas that you may not be front and center and top of mind for you as a contract owner or a project manager or a project coordinator.
Yeah.
So
And the thing with AI tools is they have their place, right? Like I'm not saying never use them. They have their place. But because they're wrong more often than they're right when it comes to construction contracts and particularly litigation strategy, I don't even want to think about trying to use those for litigation strategy. You just have to know enough yourself to know when they're wrong, right? So like you have to have enough base level knowledge to be able to competently work with these tools to recognize the value that they can add and throw out the rest, right? So like I'm not saying never use AI. In fact, when I teach and I coach, I weave in tips for how you can use these low cost or free AI tools to elevate. But again, it's all based on, let me teach you the base level knowledge first. Because again, to your point, like I hear you. Like it's easy for people to look at me with skepticism of like, of course she's going to say that because she doesn't want AI to replace her. Sure, that's a valid critique, except for not for me specifically, because one of the things that I do is I teach people how to review, redline, and negotiate contracts like I do it so you don't have to call me every time.
Yep.
I want to give you the same framework that I personally, as the lawyer, use and teach you how to do it. That way you can supplement what I am teaching you with those AI tools, but you've got the base level knowledge to know what to weed out.
Yep. So we can talk about AI for hours, but we're gonna move off of it. I've got a saying where I've utilized more than once with people saying, "Hey, the risk isn't the contract. The risk is not executing and complying with the contract." Right. So, Megan, what are some of the problems that you've seen with some of your general contractors, subcontract, even clients? Like, listen, the client's sitting in the higher seat, right? Because they're like, "Hey, you have to get the money from me." But there's risk on each levels. So, what are some of the common things that you've seen that exist in the industry because people are just got their head down, they're trying to get through the day, that typically come and bite them in the ass, and then they go, "Shit, I should have paid attention to that."
Yeah, probably my number one is the cross default provision because it's kind of the hot new thing, right? That GCs are trying to leverage. I think, like I said, I've been doing this for about 17 years, and for the bulk of that time, I never ran into cross default provisions in subcontracts. They just weren't there. And I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, now they've proliferated, right? They're in almost every contract that I review. And for me, I often will say to a trade contractor, this is probably a deal breaker. Because, so for those who may not know what a cross default provision is, that is language in the contract that basically says, again, this would usually show up in a subcontract from GC down to subcontractor, although I'm starting to see them in primes as well, which is a little bit
I've seen
interesting
them in
because
primes.
it's interesting because you are less likely to have repeat projects between owner and GC, but it happens, of course. So it mostly comes up in subcontracts. And what that phrase basically says, that clause says, is if you've got multiple projects going on with the same GC, if you're the trade contractor and you've got multiple projects going on with the GC under separate contracts, but you get in, let's say you have three of them. You've got project A, project B, project C. If you get into some sort of dispute with your GC on project A that you can't resolve while the project is going on, so you're going through the dispute resolution provisions within the contract to work
Yep.
out this dispute, this provision allows the general contractor to withhold payment from you on project B and C
Yep.
while you work out the dispute on project A. It's incredibly abusive in my opinion. I don't respect GCs who use it. I have GCs as clients and I strongly encourage them to take it out of their subcontracts. It undermines the idea that of partnership, right? Like GCs love to throw around the term trade partner, right? They
Yeah,
don't like
for
to
sure.
say subcontractor or trade contractor. They like to say trade partner.
Yeah.
And I always say, if you've got a cross default provision in your subcontract, then trade partner is nothing more than marketing ploy for you, because that's not how you treat a partner. You don't subject a partner to cash flow problems, to potential bankruptcy, to potentially losing their entire business because of one dispute on one project. But I think a lot of times trade contractors, I think they are getting more wise to it now that we're talking about it more because it's showing up more. But oftentimes trade contractors either don't see it, like when they're scanning the contract, they just don't catch it.
They don't catch it. Yeah, they don't catch it.
Yeah. Or they don't necessarily understand the full potential implications and ramifications of it, even if they did catch it. Or, unfortunately, most often, they are desperate for the work, especially the small and mid-sized contractors, trade contractors. They're desperate for the work. And so they're going to sign whatever contract you put in front of them without really, truly taking a step back and pausing and saying, how does this fit into my overall risk tolerance and business strategy and goals? Because it may not actually be worth it. I get you have payroll to make. I get that you have a business to run. I'm not in the business of telling people don't sign any contracts. I'm not even in the business of saying they've got to accept all of your red lines or you walk away. I very rarely will say, do not sign that contract. But cross default provisions is one of them where I get real close to saying, do not sign that.
So, which kind of leads us to the next thing, and I'll tie it back to AI. That's a very simple thing to get your AI tool to read and say, "Is there a cross default provision in this contract?" That brings it up. You can circle it. Now you know where it is. So, for all those that are listening, yeah, use an AI tool that'll scan that document really quick and look for keywords. And listen, the prompting that you need to learn how to use it, yeah, they're going to come from experts like Megan. I'm going to say a little bit from guys like me who've been around it for 30 years and can hang up anyone on either side of the fence. So, those are important elements. But thanks for sharing about the cross default provision. One of the things that, obviously I've realized over time is that people forget to understand that in the default provisions and any section and notice area side is that there's timelines, and people are not cognizant of these timelines. Like, after an event is triggered, how many days or how many hours do I have to basically put somebody on notice and say, hey, this is going to happen if you don't do it? And a lot of contractors forego that. And then they forego it because there's this element of business relationship.
Yeah.
They're like, well, I don't want to tarnish my relationship with them. And you're like, well, yeah, how many of these are you going to go through before the relationship's going to get tarnished anyways? Because I call it the stages of construction is no different than marriage.
Yeah, absolutely. Notice provisions is one of the things I talk a lot about as well. In fact, this is such a common problem that I actually created a free tool called a notice clause tracker, right? Because so many times, I'm actually interested to hear your perspective on this, because in my personal experience, it's not that they're choosing to disregard the notice timelines to prioritize the relationship. In my experience, that's not the issue. The issue is that They just simply lost track of all of them. They're juggling multiple projects, multiple subcontracts, all of them with multiple different types of timelines and notice requirements in them. And they don't have a systemized approach to how to manage them, track them, and make sure that they're following through with them. And so that was why I sort of created the notice clause tracker. It's just a free tool that I have available on my website to give to people to help them better manage that particular risk, because that's the low-hanging fruit. It's like, that's the thing. You don't even need to redline it. You can just accept whatever provisions as
100%.
is in the contract. All you have to do is actually track them and comply with them. And it's a super easy, low-hanging fruit way to mitigate and better manage your risk.
Well, it's actually how you manage a project. I think people lose sight of the fact that, the trades are going to get the guys in the field are going to get the work done. That's not the challenge. There's usually some other obstacle along the way where it's missing information, incomplete information. There's delays due to somebody else's portion of work. And those are the problems that start to occur when that starts to disrupt the job. So I've said to many people that, hey, if you don't understand those notice delays and you don't exercise your right, you don't have to put, I was taught by Justice Campbell. He's a judge now, but he was my high school teacher's husband. And he says, you can't be a tissue coming out of a tissue box every time. Because people, they're going to start checking these tissues out. But sometimes you have to pull the tissue out and really blow your nose and to remind people that you're paying attention. So I will say this to anyone that's listening. Exercise the notice rights. You don't have to exercise 100% of them, but you need to set up that pattern, because the reality is when you get before a judge or a mediator or arbitrator, these are not construction experts. These are people who have either got a little bit of experience, they visited Home Depot, so now they're construction experts, and they don't know the technical nuances of what we're delivering, and they don't understand it. So we have to have context for them. And bringing up a notice on a contextual information is far greater than every time something goes wrong, you flip out a notice, right? And there's softwares that do that, right? There's softwares that purposely just fill your inbox with notice area information, and that's just garbage. Because it's not going to mean anything
from the
before that.
litigation standpoint, there's a real risk. Most times those notice provisions have pretty significant consequences for failure to follow them. So you can say, okay, I want to prioritize the relationship this time, but just know most likely in 99% of contracts, you're waiving your right to actually make that claim ever again. So you better be real sure that you're ready to prioritize the relationship, because if you end up down the line and you're like, wow, we've had a lot of different problems, I want to go back and capture everything now, you probably can't.
No, and I'm going to say that, you know what, respecting the relationship is also telling your partner, and we're going to use this word partner, they're your trade partners or your contracting partners, is telling them we got problems here. And you know what, as long as this plays out nice, we're going to be fine and friends. But if it doesn't play out nice, then too bad. I'm exercising my right because you put in the contractor. I didn't put it in. And I think the same thing goes for GCs and the primes, like on a prime contract. A lot of times you're saying, well, I'm hoping there's going to be a future project. I've been guilty of it, where I said, we're going to wait till the end, right? We're going to see how this plays out. And I can tell you, it's a fight. You'll win it. But the minute you go to litigation, I can tell you there's a series of losers. And I can tell you the only people that are not losers in this ecosystem, the lawyers. They win in litigation. Sorry, Megan, I had to say that, because everyone in the audience was like, they're the winners. But no, my lawyer, Vito Scalise, great guy. Vito will say, hey, listen, you're coming to me. We're already going to lose. You're going to donate me some money. You're going to put a wing on my house or whatever else it is. But I don't like to see you in that situation, because this is acrimony and we don't want that. We want you to be healthy. We want you to be profitable. We don't want you to have stress, because there's the underlying issue of when you're in litigation, you're trying to prove you're right. Nobody takes a look at the stress factor on you, your family, the business, the economics of your life. All those things are weighing on you. And people have heart attacks for weirder reasons. It's 2026. What's one thing you would suggest to a contractor? Forget the cross default notice. What's the one thing you would suggest to a contractor? Hey, listen, be mindful of this. Go get educated on this, because it's the starting point.
Ooh, the starting point. I would say, because there are so many nuances in terms of the provisions and how they can play out and what the red lines can look like, I think if I had to distill it down to one, I would say have a systematic approach. You can use my systematic approach, the OWN framework, optimize, way, negotiate. Again, I've got a free guide for that. You could teach yourself how to do it my way. Doesn't have to be my way. I don't care what way, just have a way. Have a systemized approach for how you review, redline, and negotiate every single contract that crosses your desk, and have everybody in the business that is responsible for doing that, for reviewing contracts, for signing contracts, apply that approach. Teach them that approach, have them apply that approach, and then at a minimum, at least every contract was run through your specific framework for reviewing, redlining, and negotiating those contracts.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic piece of advice. Are you still finding a lot of contractors are still doing pen and paper and Excel?
For the contracts themselves?
No, for the overall management of the jobs.
Excel for sure. I don't know if I have anybody that's still using pen and paper, but Excel for sure. Yeah.
That's a notch above pen and paper. Megan, I know your contract summit's coming up. It's in Chicago. Do you want to maybe share the dates real quickly?
Yeah, so it's June 3rd through 5th in Chicago this year, and it'll be the same time frame next year. So it'll still be that same first Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday in June next year at a location soon to be announced.
Awesome. For those of you guys who are interested, I think you can go to her website. It's convergeconstructionsummit.com. Check it out. If you can't make it, I would say stay in touch. Megan, how can they get in touch with you if they wanted to find you to get some
So
help?
meganshapiro.com is sort of the clearinghouse where you can find everything else. I've got a lot of different websites for all of my different offers and things that I provide to the industry, but they all link through meganshapiro.com. So you can get to Converge from there, you can get to Construction Contract Coach from there, you can get to Do It Like a Lawyer from there, and you can get to my firm website from there as well.
Awesome. That it seems like a lot of ways to find you. And obviously, you're on LinkedIn as well. So I'm
Of
sure
course. Yep.
you can always Google LinkedIn, you'll find Megan, and then you can go through those rabbit holes. I want to thank you so much for being on our podcast today. I think it was great having you. And you know what? I actually look forward to the future. What I'd like to do for the next session, Megan, is that we come up with a series of tips and tricks that people can focus in on one specific aspect, and we can do a whole series of like we do 4 or 5 of them if you're interested. And putting you on the spot, by the way. But the people will get that because 10 or 15 minute ideation and understanding where the risk is, 5 or 6 of those is going to make a huge difference for everybody in the industry.
Yep, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so
Thanks
much,
for
Megan.
having me.
It was great having you. I won't be in Chicago this year, but next year, if you tell me now, I will catch up with you for sure next year.
Follow the podcast to get new episodes the moment they go live.